Greetings again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OSI Today, the podcast featuring news and views from around the Office of Special Investigations. I'm Wayne Amon from OSI Public Affairs, and in this edition, we continue our special series, My OSI Journey, which showcases the diversity and inclusion of our command-wide members. And today, I'm really pleased to be joined by the commander of the 1st Field Investigations Squadron at Quantico, Virginia, Lieutenant Colonel Jose Marin. Sir, welcome aboard to the program. Great to have you with us and good to talk to you again.
Good morning, Wayne. Thank you for having me.
Now, in checking out your bio, I noticed one thing that really jumped out at me was that you got a Bachelor of Science degree from Texas A&M University there in College Station, and that was going to be my first question to you, sir. Having lived in the state of Texas, not too far from College Station myself, in San Antonio for about 20 years, whenever Texas A&M football was on TV, they always have a shot of the Corps of Cadets. You know, one of the staunchest supporters of that university. And I was just curious, having gone to that university with the Corps of Cadets there, were you a Corps of Cadet in that organization by any chance, or had any dealings with the Corps of Cadets there?
I sure was, Wayne. One of my most memorable experiences was being part of the Corps of Cadets.
Wow.
So I was the first in my family to go to college, let alone graduate high school. And Texas A&M and the Corps of Cadets is what drew me in, and in large part a reason of why I'm here today.
Wow. Very, very good. That must have been quite an experience. Just out of curiosity, how big is the Corps of Cadets? Is there a limit as to how many they can have in that organization?
So there isn't a limit on, when the school started in 1876, it used to be an all-male military school. And today it's not an all-male military school. Obviously, the Corps of Cadets is roughly, I think the last time I looked, somewhere a little bit over 2,500 students or so.
Wow.
But a lot of the traditions of the school and the spirit of what the school stands for is kept by these cadets. And then what was interesting to me and what drew me to it is just the tradition and the family environment that it has.
Right.
And the fact that the Corps of Cadets is comprised of not just one ROTC, like most other schools or academies, right? It's got Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's got all of the ROTCs in it, and it really did form me into the person that I am today. And I bleed maroon. I am Aggie to the core, and I am anybody that knows me knows that I'm a proud Aggie.
There you go. Very good. Spoken like a true Texas A&M alum, no doubt about that. Now, sir, for our listeners who may not be familiar with OSI, let's get into your present job just a little bit if we can. What are your responsibilities as the commander of the 1st Field Investigations Squadron? What do you do when you go to work?
When I go to work, I make a lot of phone calls and do a lot of emails.
Like a lot of us do.
Like most of us. But no, so the 1st Field Investigation Squadron, we are a squadron under the OSI Center, responsible for our protective service operations in support of the Air Force's top 3 senior leaders and 4 combatant commanders. We also have lead the command's anti-terrorism specialty teams, or AST, which is responsible for providing agile and combat-ready counterintelligence forces anywhere in the globe.
Wow.
And so those are our 2 primary mission sets. We do that from about 10 geographically separated units across the globe. And here by the end of the year, we'll roughly have an end strength of about 122, 123 people.
Wow.
And then our staff headquarters is headquartered out of the RKB here in Quantico, Virginia.
Right. Of course, is the Russell Knox building at Quantico, right?
Correct.
Now, sir, I know we had talked before on another podcast dealing with the 1st Phys, and you work very closely with our Air Force defenders as well as special agents. How does that dynamic really play out? It makes a good symbiotic relationship, if you will. From what we discussed about it before, it really works for you folks.
Yeah, it really does. And that's we've always had a really strong partnership with our security forces throughout OSI, right? Whether it's our joint drug enforcement teams or our joint sexual assault teams, we've always had or are in a deployed environment, our tactical security elements. We've always had a really close working partnership, if not, brotherhood and sisterhood, if you will, with our defenders.
Right.
What makes our protective service operations a little bit unique is, and first of its kind, it's usually the defenders that we partner with are detailed over to us, right? And they still belong to security forces. So for the first time that I'm aware of in our history, we actually have embedded with us security forces defenders that are on our manning documents. They're OSI owned, 3 PAPA, the AF, the specialty duty code for our defenders that are on our books. And so where traditionally we've historically, I should say, relied on our defenders to help us with vehicles and driving and some of the logistics parts of our protective mission. Right. Today, you can put a security forces defender and an agent side by side in the protection mission. And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They're able to really plug and play and interoperate with all of our teams, which has been absolutely phenomenal. To the point where for the first time we have security forces senior master sergeant as a sitting squadron superintendent of an OSI unit. We also have a security forces defender who is a sitting superintendent of one of our detachments out here in the National Capital Region. So really excited to partner with our defenders and have them part of the team.
Well, it sounds like, both elements are really attached at the hip, and it's been a great relationship for both sides.
No, it really does, right? And on the topic of diversity and inclusion, it just adds more to that mix, right? We have an opportunity to bring folks with a different mindset than maybe, OSI agents have grown up with, a diverse pool of folks to really pull from and to bring into the mix. So all in all, I am really excited to continue that relationship. And I think that what they bring to the fight is absolutely invaluable as we work and find ways to continue to protect our senior leaders.
Very well said. Now let's get into the little dossier of Jose Marin a little bit, if we can, please, sir. When and how did you become interested in law enforcement, and then subsequently the Office of Special Investigations?
That's actually an interesting story, Wayne, because, I've done a lot of recruiting throughout my years, and I've had the opportunity to hire a lot of folks into OSI. And, there are a lot of folks who this is what they want to do. They've wanted to do their entire life, right? They've known that they wanted to be in law enforcement, or they wanted to be a cop. Some folks that I've talked to, they joined the Air Force and said, hey, I joined the Air Force only to do OSI. I went to go do this other stuff because I can't come right into OSI because at least in our enlisted force, we recruit from other career fields within the department. But that's not the case for me.
Really?
Growing up, I never had a desire to be a cop, to be honest with you. I grew up in the inner cities of Miami and cities like Opelika and Carroll City and North Miami.
Right.
And if anybody is listening is familiar with those cities, they know what I mean.
Okay.
And where I grew up, the relationship between law enforcement and the local community was strained, to say the least.
Sure.
And so it's not something that I necessarily ever really aspired or had a desire, right, to wear a badge.
Right.
But I always had a passion for helping others and for making a positive impact in other people's lives.
Right.
I've always believed that life is short, and at the end of it all, there's nothing that you can take with you. So why not focus on the things that you can leave behind and the things of eternal significance, right?
Definitely.
Because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters when you're gone. And in a big way, I think that passion and some divine intervention for sure ultimately led me to OSI. Growing up, I wanted to be a pilot. Fancy that, right? Joining the Air Force. And, my dad, we didn't grow up with a lot of money, but my parents always found ways of making family time. Right. And I remember after church on Sundays, we would pass by some Dunkin' Donuts and we would go to the flight line at Miami Airport and we'd just watch planes land and take off.
Right.
And I'm like, man, that is cool. Like, I want to fly planes one day. And fast forward, I was in middle school, I think. We went to an air show, and then I got to see some air power at work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and those are the type of planes that I wanted to fly.
Right.
And that kind of drove everything. That drove my decisions to join JROTC in high school. That drove me wanting to go to military school and go into Texas A&M. And I knew what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to get there. Right. I didn't have the access to Google that we have now to kind of how do I become a pilot in the Air Force.
Right.
And where I grew up, we didn't have a lot of mentors that had paved that way before. So I was kind of trying to figure it out on my own.
Right. Right.
And to make a long story short, lack of some mentorship and really not knowing how to do this. I got to A&M and they said, hey, you have to go take this Air Force qualifying test, the AFOQT, so that we can give you some money for some uniforms and reimburse you. So I'm like, just Christmas treated. I didn't know what that was, and fast forward to my junior year, they're like, hey, okay, who wants to commission? I'm like, yeah, I want to commission. Right.
Yeah.
Because not everybody that goes to Texas A&M ends up commissioning, while Texas A&M commissions the most officers outside of the service academies. Only a small portion actually end up commissioning. So I said, yep, I'll commission. So well, you have to take this, you have to pass the AFOQT test. I'm like, oh, that thing matters. Okay. So I took the AFOQT test, twice, which, by the way, you're only allowed to take it twice. Here's that divine intervention.
Yeah.
And I missed, English is a second language to me, and I missed the verbal score by 1 point.
Wow.
And so they're like, hey, we're going to send you to field training, and if you do good, we might be able to convince the Air Force to let you take it a third time. Took it a third time after studying, and when I got the 1 point, right? Wow. So I got to commission, and
third time's the charm.
Third time's a charm, you know. And so I was in my senior year, and they said, okay, well, let's. I went to my colonel and said, hey, okay, let's talk about this pilot slot. How do I become a pilot? Like, I passed this test that you said I needed to pass, and you said it didn't take too much weight until whether or not I get a pilot slot. And they're like, well, let's take a look at how you scored on the pilot and nav. I'm like, whoa, like, I didn't know that mattered. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't carry a lot of weight, but you do have to have the minimum scores. Well, I missed it by 5 points on the pilot and the nav.
Wow.
And I could not afford taking it again and then not passing it at all and then not commissioning.
Sure.
So I was at a crossroads of, well, what am I going to be when I grow up? And I had heard about OSI in field training. They came in with their glasses and the suits and said that I needed a 3.5 GPA in like political science or foreign affairs.
Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds super cool, but I've got a 2.9 GPA in basket weaving. There's no way that they're going to want me. Right.
Yeah.
And my colonel asked me, oh, hey, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I like making a positive impact in people's lives. I would go be a training instructor or an MTI, but I can't do that because I'm going to be an officer.
Correct.
So I was trying to figure out what I want to do, Wayne. And two of my buddies in the Corps were OSI. I feel bad. I really do. OSI was what they wanted to do. Yeah. And they had done the internship with OSI down in at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. And, they'd been with OSI for about 2 weeks. And so they were gearing up to go do an interview with the commander. And they said, hey, do you want to come to the interview? And I'm like, well, like, they don't know me. I haven't done the internship. It sounds like a super cool job, but I'm just not what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But at this point, like, what do I got to lose,
Sure.
And so I went to Men's Warehouse and I bought a blazer and a pair of slacks, which that was all my money that I had for the 2 months as a college student. And I went to the interview, and the rest is history. Out of the three of us that went into the interview, I got the slot.
Fantastic.
And so my other two buddies weren't too happy with that. But fast forward, I mean, gosh, from there, I've been in with the OSI for 15 years, active duty.
Yeah.
By then, so about 17 years later, here I am on a podcast with you telling me about my journey in OSI.
Wow. When you began your career in OSI, were there any specific challenges that you faced that you had to overcome to make it all happen at the beginning for you?
Oh yeah, I would say my biggest challenge was finding my place as a young officer. Having gone through the Corps of Cadets and the military schoolhouse kind of environment, right? It's very structured,
right?
And you quickly get ingrained. And anybody that's gone through any of the service academies or the Citadel or Texas A&M or know that you get ingrained into, hey, you're an officer. There's the officers and there's the enlisted, and never shall the two commingle, right?
Yeah.
And there's a very hard line in the sand about the fraternization or spending time outside of work together, and in certain career fields, when you come into OSI or to the Air Force or to the military, it's very salient, right? In the Air Force, for example, when you come into a security forces squadron as a young lieutenant, right? Like you're put in charge and you got this group of enlisted folks that work for you.
Right.
But in OSI, that's not the case. I came into OSI, and other than my commander, I was the only other officer. And so all of my peers were enlisted, and we were all probies together.
Right.
And if you can imagine, at the age of 22, I'm in California. All of my family is in Florida. I don't know anybody out in California. I'm by myself.
Right.
I don't have any, support system, if you will. My only nucleus of people are my enlisted, peers.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do on a Friday night? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so it's difficult for me navigating that in that if I had some challenges or some concerns, like, do I go to the enlisted folks that work with me to complain? Because I always heard you don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to my boss because my boss at the time was a lieutenant colonel. I'm a lieutenant. I don't want to seem incompetent. And so kind of finding my place as an officer was a little bit difficult for me, but the way that I overcame that was with just some really good mentorship. I mean, I've always believed that if I'm where I am today, it's not because I've done anything extraordinary, right? I was telling you before we started, I haven't saved any babies from burning fires, I haven't caught, like a super spy or anything crazy. And definitely haven't done, any of the other heroic things that some of our awesome agents have done, like in a deployed environment.
Right.
But if I've made it where I am today, it's because I've had just some really good mentorship from senior NCOs. And it was the senior NCOs that pulled me under their wing and gave me their advice on, hey, listen, this is how you navigate this. And this is, it's okay to come out and kind of hang out with us and then kind of just, break off when you think that you need to, or, hey, you're coming off a little too strong, just peel it back a little bit. And so it was that good senior NCO mentorship that helped me find my place as a young officer, and then just continue to grow me throughout, my last 15 years with OSI.
Well, that certainly ties in directly to the next question is who or what inspires you to do your best in OSI? It sounds like that mentorship really was the fuel that you needed as a young officer to become who you are today.
Oh yeah. So what inspires me to do my best in OSI? I would say the people, hands down.
Yeah.
The people in OSI is what inspires me to do my best, from up and down the chain of command. Up the chain of command is the level of trust that my bosses have put on me.
Right.
It always, that motivates me to do my best. The family environment that OSI creates inspires me to do my best. Again, it's people. The fact that I've got both peers, subordinates, and supervisors that care about my well-being that, are interested in my family life and what I've got going on, it makes me not want to let them down. Right. And the people that I have the pleasure of serving, I see like my staff and how hard they work on our AST side of the house. I see how they are ready on a moment's notice to get on a plane and within, 48 hours be on the other side of the world to help with a lot of the situations that we've got going on today.
Sure.
On our PSO side of the house, I mean, they're canceling date nights and missing birthdays because they're out there protecting the senior leaders of our organization. That inspires me, right? And that inspires me to give my best, to be the best that I can be, because I believe that they deserve nothing less than me.
Sure. Colonel, has that been the most gratifying part for you in your job with OSI?
Yeah, I'll tell you there are several things. It's hard to find like the one thing that I would say is the most gratifying part.
Sure.
I think one of the most gratifying parts have been the friendships and the relationships that I've made along the way. I've been in some foxholes with some people and had an opportunity to live some challenging situations.
Right.
And a lot of my closest friends today, and that of my wife as well, that's been in this journey with me, is the friendships that we've made along the way. The level of trust and autonomy. It's hard to put into words the amount of weight and trust that we put on our very young agents to go out there and execute the mission. I remember as a lieutenant, I was pick a place around the world, and it was just me. I'm like 23-year-old, lieutenant here.
Yeah.
Here's an 06 who is relying on me to have vital information and to give him advice on the best way to protect his troops. But and the last thing that I would say is probably the most gratifying, going back to my initial point about kind of what motivates me and what makes me tick, right? Or kind of why I ended up joining OSI, is the positive impact that we have in other people's lives. Both those that we serve and those who we serve with, as well as our national security impact that we have on a day-to-day basis.
It sounds like that's really been tangible for you, Colonel.
Yeah. I get bored easily, Wayne. I really do, and I can tell you that I haven't been bored with OSI in 15 years. Just about when I kind of figure out what it is that I'm doing, I've been tapped on the shoulder and have an opportunity to go do something completely different.
Right.
But it's always been impactful, whether it's, a crim case where I got to put someone behind bars that had done some really heinous and horrible things, or, clearing a member of wrongdoing, or running counterintelligence to force protection operations in areas that I never in a million years thought that I would go to and do, to operating in Iraq or Korea. OSI has such a wide reach when it comes to the impact that we have on national security and just protecting people in general, that it really has been an awesome experience.
Sounds like it sure has, no doubt about that. Now, recognize that in hindsight, it's always 20/20, Colonel. If you could do it all over again, is there anything that you would change about your OSI career so far?
No, I wouldn't change one thing.
Okay.
The other day, I heard one of our chiefs, and then afterwards I said, hey, where did this come from? And he's like, this was Chief Burnflint's comment that
former command chief for
OSI, to where she mentioned that, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. Right. And so that really sat with me because, man, I've been uncomfortable in a lot of throughout my career. When I first started, we all start doing criminal investigations in OSI, right? For the most part, some of us get to go do some other things. But by and large, a lot of us start, grassroots crim cases. And I remember, I ran my first 6 months trying to figure all this stuff out. I finally got to a point where like I knew what I was doing. I can like run my cases, and I knew how to input it into the system called I2MS.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. And then my boss taps me in the shoulder and says, "Hey, Jose, I need you to go be the counterintelligence branch chief." I said, "Sir, the only way that I know how to spell counterintelligence is a 2-letter abbreviation of CI. Like I have, and you want me to go lead a team of like four to five airmen." It's like, "Oh, you'll figure it out." And I was like, "All right," and it's been like that from one assignment to the next. But with every opportunity that I've had, I've grown. I've learned. It's molded me into a better person. I think, hopefully a better leader, really has opened my eyes into the breadth that it is that is OSI. So I wouldn't change one thing.
Right. Now you mentioned, you open your eyes to the breadth of, the umbrella that is OSI. What direction do you envision OSI going into the future?
That's a really good question. If you've read the interim national security strategy that President Biden put out, it mentions in there that our world is, how does he put it? That our world is in an inflection point. And he underscores that with the need for us to face tomorrow's challenges from a position of strength.
Right.
Meaning that in order to maintain our national security posture and to continue to enjoy the American dream of freedom and democracy that we hold dear, and it's the cornerstone of our country.
Right.
In an ever-increasing competition space, that we must be postured to meet these challenges head on.
Sure.
And to this end, I think that OSI strategy in building the OSI we need is absolutely vital and has the right sight picture for what OSI is going to look like or needs to look like in the future.
Yeah.
As the demand for a robust counterintelligence force to protect our most sensitive technologies increases, as well as the ever-changing landscape and sophistication of cyber threat actors, and the need to be an agile and combat-ready force in this competition continuum that we find ourselves today, very different than what we've been doing for the past 20 years.
Right.
We have to ensure that we recruit, we develop, we retain the best talent throughout our OSI family. But that we also continue to build, maintain, and modernize critical capabilities, as well as strengthen our strategic partnerships.
Sure.
To ensure that the OSI we need comes to be, right? To meet the OSI that we need to meet today's and tomorrow's challenges,
right,
is a reality. And so I think that the current strategy that the command has in building that OSI that we need to be in that position of strength that the president has called us to be in is absolutely spot on. Right. And I think that when we look at where we're going as a command and what we're doing, and some of the things that we've been able to do, and the strength that we will be at and some of the capabilities that we're growing, we're spot on to continue to be a relevant force, an investigative agency, a relevant counterintelligence agency that'll be ready to meet the department's challenges head on.
Right, right. Now, you alluded to this earlier, Colonel, about diversity and inclusion. Why, in your view, is diversity and inclusion foundational to the success of OSI?
I mean, we could talk for diversity and inclusion for an entire podcast, right? As to why I think that's important.
Well, kind of give us your broad brush perspective of that.
But so I think it's vitally important because it makes us better as a whole. Uh-huh. It makes us a better organization, and it helps us meet our goals, right, of the future.
Right.
I grew up in, I was telling you earlier, I grew up in Miami, and I'm Hispanic, right? I'm Latino, born in Costa Rica. Parents immigrated here, when I was 5. Spanish is my first language. And growing up in Miami is a huge melting pot. I mean, I had friends from everywhere that you can think of. I had Latin friends, African American friends. I had, Asian American friends. And key to that is that you hear something and then you hear American, something and you hear American. We're all Americans, despite where we come from, what our backgrounds are. And I think that makes us unique. And because of that, the diversity of thought is what I believe helps us to move forward. It helps us to not look at things through a single scoped lens.
Right.
I think iron sharpens iron, and that diversity and inclusion within our force is absolutely vital for us to be able to execute our mission. And I think that it's something to be proud of, and I think it's something that we should continue to strive for.
Very well said. Colonel Marin, put your recruiting hat on for just a little bit now, because you mentioned the word recruiting early on in the podcast. What advice would you give someone who would like to join OSI?
Man, so someone that would like to join OSI, what advice? I think if you're out there and you're listening, you're like, man, I wonder if this OSI thing is for me. I would say you don't have to be perfect to come join this organization. I've made a lot of mistakes throughout my career, and I have been fortunate enough to have great leaders who have not beat me up because of my mistakes, but ensured that I grew from them, that I learned from them, and that I became better, because of them. So I would say that, if folks are looking for a rewarding mission or opportunity with a wide variety of mission sets, with significant impact and opportunities to travel the world. I mean, I've been to over, probably at this point, last time I did some numbers, were 45, 46 different countries.
Wow.
In 15 years.
You can start your own tour agency.
You could, and it's funny enough, because I mentioned that my degree was in basket weaving, but it's actually in tourism. In tourism marketing. I figured if I got injured, I can definitely go run a hotel somewhere for the rest of my life, and I'll be happy with it.
There you go.
But as someone that's looking for a variety of mission sets with significant impacts and opportunity to travel and see the world, OSI is definitely it. One of the things that I tell people that's unique about OSI is that if you come to the Air Force and you come to be a maintainer and that's what you're going to do for 20 years, you are going to make sure that our planes are working. Right. If you come in and you're going to be, pick another AFSC, or job, whatever that job is that you come into the Air Force, unless you decide you're going to cross train and go do something else, that is what you're going to do. But in OSI, I think we're one of the few, if not the only organization, and maybe I'm a little bit biased on this one. I know Ms. Dixon would appreciate that shout out to our biases, but I recognize it. We've got everything from CRIM, counterintelligence, cyber, polygraph, forensic scientists. I mean, you pick your gamut of law enforcement and counterintelligence activities, we have it.
Sure.
And so, you can find your niche, within the organization and have an opportunity to grow. I would say that if someone is looking for a family-oriented organization that is also a premier law enforcement and counterintelligence agency respected throughout the law enforcement community, both military and non-military, and throughout the intelligence community, and that if you're not afraid to roll up your sleeves and put in the hard work, come to OSI. And hopefully 15 years down the road, you'll be in a podcast, talking about your experience and how awesome it's been.
Very, very well said. Now, before we wrap it up, Colonel, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Wayne, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. This has been awesome. Having an opportunity to share my background and story and kind of what has led me to where I am today. It's a great opportunity. So I just want to say thank you And to anybody that's out there that's listening, whether you're just in the service or within OSI, just want to say thank you for all the sacrifices that you make on a daily basis in service to your country and to your fellow servicemen.
Our guest is, I'm sorry, sir. We had another thing to add. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you there for a second.
Nope. No, you're good, Wayne.
Okay. Our guest has been the commander of the 1st Field Investigations Squadron, Lieutenant Colonel Jose Marin. Sir, thanks again for taking the time to be with us. It's always great to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, Wayne.
And thanks to all of you listening for tuning in. For OSI Today, my OSI Journey, I'm Wayne Amon saying so long for now.